This blog post, I posed the question of, am I and others in my demographic even allowed to be single? This comes in response to a theme I keep seeing via social media that suggests men shouldn't broke date per se, or that they should be established before even attempting to enter a relationship. And my assertion is that the opposite is true. If anything, the longer a guy, especially a non 20 percenter, aka not an athlete, not a CEO or monarch, stays single, i.e., trying to establish himself, the less likely he is to reach stability. And as I've alluded to in other videos, this is mainly due to Western neoliberalism, which rewards femininity and penalizes masculinity. And if you don't agree with that, look at the American prisons. Is it mostly men or women? Um, I rest my case in that regard. Moreover, given that a lot of goods and services, resources, proprietary information, what have you, is gatekept by the modern Western woman, I don't even see how a normal guy thinks he's going to ascend without entering a contract formally or informally with a woman. An example of this from my past pertains to the purchase of my first and only home. So I bought a home in my late 20s, and coincidentally, I started a full time security job during this process, which, side note, is unadvisable. And for context, I had already had a more stable traditional job for 4 years leading up to the home buying process. That's how I got the work history that allowed me to even be considered. Um, but as the process was going on, I switched over and made this security job at a concert venue. I made it my main source of income as opposed to before, where I was working as what they call an overhire, where they just um, call you call you in as needed. Yeah, so as you may know, the home buying process is highly invasive and requires tons of communication between the lender and the buyer's employer or employers. And shortly put, at this job that I was now making my main source of income, to put it shortly, um, there was a girl who worked there who I wasn't attracted to, but who I enjoyed talking to during downtime, aka a work wife, is how you could describe her. Basically, after I got in the home, in like maybe the weeks following or something, maybe even months, I don't remember, but I know eventually there was a point where she approached me and told me in more or less words that she was the reason that it was approved, because the other office personnel weren't doing their job and proving that I worked there full time. And if I remember, while it wasn't quite that black and white, i.e., there were other factors like my credit, my work history, etc., um, that went into the approval. I can't admit what she said. It tracked. It definitely had some truth, especially knowing what I know about some of the other people who worked in that office at that time, who were basically Ivy League elitists who probably had no interest in helping a working class Negro obtain generational wealth. Yeah, what she said, yeah, was true. And I think I even at the time didn't overthink it. I just was like, oh, thank you. But looking back, what scares me the most is, what if I hadn't been so cuddly with her during my time working there? I mean, back then I was naive and bubbly, whereas now I'm cynical, black pilled, and honestly, when I sense the neoliberal algorithm is trying to map me to, just speaking candidly, some homely or overweight, yet easy to talk to work wife, I generally reject it. Um, that's now that's my current state. It can even be assumed that this, I'm sure, it contributed at least partly to um, my recent termination from an IT tech support role that I expanded on in another long ass video. But I'm sure it contributed in some part, given that, I didn't flirt with the two female trainers like the other men did, like I noticed they did, and thus I probably didn't get those extra tips, aka the secret sauce. And there's always some secret sauce. There's research even to show, just even with like high school education, there's favoritism. There's some students that are getting the private school education and other students that are getting just the regular education, and based on whatever factors. Maybe they're the quarterback, maybe their parents know somebody. But so, I'm just saying that let's not, though it may sound conspiratorial, let's not act like that preferential training and education doesn't happen. But I guess what I was saying was, I guess back to the home and the girl, the home buying process. What I wonder is, with the home buying process, would have went different if, from the day I started that security job, I didn't maybe reciprocate her advances, or maybe I acted more stoic when she came around. I'm wondering, like, would the process, would the approval process would have went drastically different? And truthfully, maybe so, maybe it would have. And that realization is definitely spooky, if not dystopian. Furthermore, as I conceded earlier, staying single until one achieves success is advisable for men higher up in the caste system. And there is a caste system in America. It's not explicit like the Hindu caste system, but it's basically like a shadow caste system. But yeah, for men higher up, aka the status quo, yeah, I can understand that advice is somewhat applicable. For example, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, I'm sure at some point was broke in his life, probably more likely when he was at Harvard at some point, or at least broke-ish, because I don't think anyone who gets accepted to Harvard is ever really broke. But my point is, men like that, the winners, they know who they are. Just like the losers, like me, we know from an early age that we've been dealt a bad hand, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. So my point is just that the don't broke date advice is applicable to such a small group of men that it's almost useless. To recap, this post attempts to assess the feasibility of bachelor life in a Western society, and consequently rejects the popular social media notion that men should try to establish themselves before dating or even marrying, given that women, on average, hold the metaphorical keys to success in North America. Truly, it's a topic that can be approached from different angles, and I'll definitely be beating and resurrecting this horse again in the future, especially expanding on how this bachelor's hacks, as CGA would put it in his early content, is affecting me even to this day. With that said, thanks for watching and stay pissed.